Oh, you got it? Yeah, it's live. Watch live now. Yeah, it's live now, my guy.
I know. Now we just gotta get all the guys back over here because they're on the other one. Can you message them?
Yeah, I think they got me. Local channel.
Can you message them?
No, just watching. You go.
That's the
This one? I see you live.
All right, we're starting. We're starting to figure this
I
out.
see you live.
Hello, Mindown Journey. How are you guys? Let's see if we can get everybody else over here. I know we kind of had a snafu technology-wise.
Can drop the link to.
I will when he gets over here. All right, we're starting. We're starting to figure this out.
I see you live.
Hello, Mindown Journey. How are you guys? Journey. Let's see if we can get everybody else over here. I know we kind of had a snafu technology-wise. There he is.
Can drop the link to.
I will when he gets over here. All right, we're starting. We're starting to figure this out.
I see you live.
Hello, Mindown Journey. How are you guys? Oh, what do we have? Let's see if we can get everybody else over here. I know we kind of had a snafu technology-wise. There he is. Yeah, but we just.
Can drop the link to.
I will when he gets over here. All right, we're starting. We're starting to figure this out.
I see you live.
All right. Can anybody hear me? Give me, what do they say, a number one? Or am I talking to myself?
It needs to be live there or on YouTube. Yeah, there's you.
That is all right.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, talk again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
My boss behind me.
Hi, boss. Hello.
Just get promoted.
She's
The
my
boss in the house.
Yeah, she's the supervisor. So
Uh-oh.
yeah,
We better behave. Yeah.
So how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And hello to OMJ,
Yeah.
our Mindoro journey. I don't see
And I'm
anybody else.
some others will drop in. We had some folks from Norway earlier today visit with us and stuff. So we'll give them a few minutes
Yeah,
um,
very
to get,
cool.
to do that. So, well, today's a big day in America.
Yeah, it sure is. Um, and no matter the outcome, I'm afraid there's going to be a lot of unrest back in the states.
Well, the sad thing, there's people in large cities that are boarding up their stores. Their
Yeah,
businesses are all shutting down because they're afraid of the riots and the looting
yeah,
and the craziness that's going to go with it. Right now, the race is too early to call, but
right.
and you being former military and everything, that it's kind of sad that we've gotten to this point where so many people want to just tear stuff up to be tearing stuff up.
Yeah,
They want to be mean, and I don't really understand that one. So
well, that's a good point, David. It goes back to the old adage that I'm a firm believer that protesters protest and rioters riot. There,
that's
there's there, there's no other way to cut it. Protesters protest, rioters riot, and there's just people out there that just want to create hate and discontent. Create havoc. Um,
yeah,
you know, that's the kind of world in which we live in now.
and
Um,
sadly, it's for a lot of people, if you don't have what somebody else has, they feel like it's their duty to bring others down.
yeah,
You know, instead of just working hard and bringing themselves up. You might go
right.
the other way. Tell them we're over here. So we got to start a new live stream. So maybe that's why they're not over here. So, but yeah, that's what really bugs me is we seem to always want to hurt other people
Hmm.
for no
Yeah,
reason, just because we can.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
Abs-
what happened?
absolutely.
Anything good
It,
with the storms in the Philippines today? Are they all over now?
I think they've already passed through the Philippines. You know, from the friends that I've spoken with, OMJ, amongst others, it didn't really hit Mindoro real hard. They have the trickle down effects from the storm. Um, but I talked to Joe and Jenny Journey J3, and he has videos out there from his wife from over near Mindoro showing some damage. So anytime you have a storm like that, even if you're not in the direct line of fire, so to speak, there's still going to be a backdraft, if you will, and there's going to be some sustainable damage. Um,
Yeah.
but from my understanding, uh, this storm was obviously the biggest one, on record for this year. And the Philippines averages around 20 cyclones per year.
Wow.
The Philippines does. And now this storm, as they say, was as big as Haiyan, and Haiyan killed 6,300 people. This one took, the lives of like 16 people. So you're wondering, how can a storm of the same caliber, or maybe even a little stronger, um, sustain a lot less deaths than back in 2013? And I think much of that is attributed to the warning system that the Philippines had during this last storm. They were already evacuating a lot of people. Some 400,000 people were displaced. And it was because of the Philippines' quick response to the advance notice of the storm coming that they were able to save a lot of lives. You
I would agree with you. I think that's something that America has learned the hard way after Katrina here, you know, was to heed those warnings and get the warnings out early and get out of the way and get prepared.
Yeah,
I think we've had four hurricanes hit landfall here, and they've all hit
yeah,
within about 150 miles of each other. So
yeah,
the Gulf Coast got swamped,
yeah. Well,
literally.
they say that there's another one sitting out there, brewing up. And but the path of that storm at this point, from what I was told, from what I read, is that this storm path, this new one coming in, is a bit erratic. So they're
Okay,
not quite sure of the path right now. But this last storm that went through Raleigh, they said that its path affected in some way, shape, or form affected 19 million people here in the
wow,
Philippines. Yes.
wow.
Yeah. In some way, shape, or form, it affected 19 million Filipinos. So,
You
yeah,
know,
it's,
I was telling my brother about how resilient the Philippine people are,
oh, yeah,
and yeah, as devastating as these are, they're kind of used to it. You
they
know,
are.
a couple of months ago, I got a brother in Louisiana who they got hit with the big hurricane of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of flooding, a lot of high winds. He lost his business. The interesting thing was the fact that they lost electricity for so long. In
Yeah.
America, it was really funny because we wind up sending cash
Mm-hmm.
to Louisiana because my brother didn't have any cash because all the banks were shut down. The gas stations were shut down because everything's so electronic in America that he couldn't go to the bank to get any money to buy any groceries. So it's just kind of like one of those things. We're not prepared for anything like what the Philippines could possibly handle.
Yeah. And,
We,
and the other thing too, David, that I think attributes to it, and it's not a negative reflection. It's just a reflection, a dose of reality. Is the Philippines infrastructure also plays a role into a lot of the devastation that keeps reoccurring. There's a lot of homes that are built with wood and
yeah,
tin roofs. Well, it doesn't take much of a wind to blow that off its foundation. But the infrastructure has been improving greatly. With this latest administration.
yes,
Um, but just because of the tropical climate and the locale of the Philippines, its geographic location, and averaging 20 cyclones per year, it's just a natural freak of nature that this is going to be a reoccurring thing, every year, unfortunately.
the other side of the coin about your infrastructure or the houses, the way they're built, is the fact that they can be easily blown over, but they can easily be rebuilt.
Yeah, that is very true.
And
That
so
is
people
very
get up
true.
living a lot quicker than we do. Around here, if our house gets wiped out, it's going to take me a year to get another house. So,
Yeah. When right now the numbers are at about 16 deaths for this storm. Now, people in the government may say, or people in the media may say that, wow, 16 people, that's not a lot. But there is always a but. It's not if you're just talking in terms of numbers.
that's
But
right.
we're not talking numbers though. We're talking families that were affected by those deaths. So while one might say, yeah, only 16 perished, but those numbers might not seem to be very much to a lot of people, but unless you're one
Right.
of those 16,
Yeah.
families,
You're part of the
yeah,
immediate family. Yeah, it's a big deal. And
yeah,
we
absolutely,
we have family in the Philippines, and every time one pops up, Lorelai is from the island of Cebu, so her island is
yeah,
usually protected. So, but we
yeah,
always worry about them. But let me touch base on the infrastructure a tiny bit. I was there back in 2013, and then we got to go back in October of last year. And I'll tell you, I can tell the difference of the
mhm.
infrastructure like you can't believe.
Oh yeah,
Sidewalks, stoplights, lanes in the roads, curbs. There's some major infrastructure happening in the Philippines.
oh yeah, that's right. And I always correct people when they talk about the Philippines and they refer to the Philippines as a third world country. I always put the brakes on that and say, hey, look, the Philippines is no longer a third world country. It's a developing country,
It is.
and it's a country that has that is surrounded with lots of minerals. This could be a very rich country economically. They have a lot of minerals here. When things are operating, outside of the pandemic era, time frame, if you will, tourism is big here. Um, they just to be very honest with you, they just need to regulate and the president has been trying to clean up a lot of the corruption that's been
Yeah,
taking place in the Philippines. So, bless his heart, he's even finding, and he admitted that it's more deeply rooted than he realized.
yeah,
You know, in terms of some of the media that I have read,
right.
allegedly quoting him. So yeah, if you can clean up the corruption, there's no reason why, 85%, 90% of your culture, the people that live here have to live in poverty,
That's
you
right.
know, because there is a lot of potential here in the Philippines. But anyways,
Um,
I'll let you
yeah,
welcome in I'll let you welcome in your guests, and if you want to get to the topic at hand,
yeah. Let's. So let's
sure,
see
you
what
bet.
we got in the room today. We got, of course, me, and we got Philippines.
Kim,
Ken, my wife wants to take over apparently.
Joe, how to Hawaii, and
My,
Mindoro.
my wife loves saying hi to everybody.
Yeah, I don't know how to make this
Uh,
reply.
but uh, but anyway, while she's playing around with that, since she's the boss, um, let me first ask you: how does it feel to become a YouTube legend?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. No, I wouldn't know. I'm far from that. Yeah, I mean, come on, I'm a small YouTube channel. Um, there's a lot of we're all in about the same category, as
Yeah,
far as that goes. But I know that you're being playful and and
right.
and I yeah, so yeah. But
Well, I thought
anyway,
I'd get you up the game a little bit there,
yeah.
get you going a little. So, hi, James, I guess.
Remember?
Oh, hey, James. How
We
are
were
you,
our
buddy?
first friends.
Yeah. So, now, where were you married at? Were you married here in the U.S. or the Philippines or?
No, I was married in the Philippines. People often ask me, well, how did you meet your wife? My wife and I were actually technically, we let me just put it this way. In short, we met about 5 to 6 months after I arrived in country. When I arrived in country over 6 years ago, there I did not come here, because of a lady. I came here to live out a dream, that I experienced when I was in the Marine Corps back in the late 1980s. And I made a promise to myself that someday when I retire, I'm going to move to the Philippines, and that's what got me here. That's the reason why I came here. But we were married here in the Philippines. We've been together 6 years and married a little over 3 years.
That's great. I mean, we love the Philippines. So let me touch base on that a little bit. So you were there in the '80s with the military, and now you're there now. How do you
Yeah.
compare the two Philippines?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Man, you went yard on that one. Bases loaded over the fence. That's a very good question. How would I compare the two Philippines? Well, first and foremost, I think that when I first came here, to be fair, back then, the Philippines was referred to as a third world country because of the lack of the infrastructure. Now, 28 years removed, the infrastructure is much better now, obviously, than it was years ago. Thus, meaning the cost of living here is not as cheap as it
Right.
was back in the late 1980s, as I recall. The other thing that has changed, well, the Filipinos have always been very hospitable, very friendly people. That hasn't changed. But I have noticed that the a little bit of the culture respect for older people has changed a little bit. And I'll give you an example of that. I remember back in the day when I was a young Marine and I would board the back of a Jeep, everybody would automatically slide towards the driver. Automatically, didn't matter who you were, they would automatically slide toward the driver. Nowadays, everybody holds their seat. They don't slide. It doesn't matter if you're old, if you're big and heavy like myself that has a hard time maneuvering between the people, to get on the Jeep. A lot of people don't slide anymore. They don't
Right.
slide like they used to. So there are some cultural differences, but let's bear in mind it's the same way in the United States. And I think the younger generation, and I don't mean to attack the younger generation, but we live in a society where I think a lot of the younger people feel a sense of entitlement, you know, and it doesn't matter what country you live in. Eventually, that, when, 28 years removed, it doesn't matter if you're in the US, in the Philippines, Canada, wherever, there's a sense of entitlement amongst the younger generation. Not all of them, not all of them, mind you, because I ran into some really mature, very thoughtful and caring young people. But across the board, overall, we live in a different society nowadays. But as far as the hospitality and the politeness and the kindness of the Filipino people, that has not changed. That's deeply rooted and ingrained, into their culture here. One of the reasons why I love the Philippines.
It's one of the reasons we all love the Philippines. How,
Yeah,
how do you think technology, because I believe technology is what's shaping the young people to be disconnected with the rest of society versus sliding up and being more respectful to their elder. I think technology, there you go. That's my point. 24/7. When I was in the Philippines in October, I remember seeing so many young people on their phones, just like in America, that I could have stole their food and they wouldn't have noticed.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, technology has kind of made the world, and technology has kind of destroyed it in a way.
That's right.
When I go out to dinner and then I invite somebody to go out to dinner, And it's the same way in the United States before I came here over 6 years ago. Even in America, when I invite somebody to dinner, and especially when I'm paying for their dinner, I want to sit and socialize and catch up with them. I don't want to be looking across the dinner table at somebody playing on their cell phone. You could,
I
and you know what I've done, David? I've done this in the United States. When people do that to me, when I invite them and I'm treating them to dinner and they don't have the respect for me to put their phone down, for an hour or whatever, I throw the money on the table, I pay the bill, and I'm up and I'm out. I'm gone. I don't
I
even I don't even tell them why, because if I have to tell them why, then they're more ignorant than I thought they were,
yes,
you know.
I totally agree. I think we need to have that human respect for each other. So I know. So we talked a little bit about this. So the second time you were here in the Philippines, when you came this go around, what was your impression of the Philippines when you got off of the plane? I know you had some prior knowledge of it, but it's been 18 years, you said, roughly, by the time you
Yeah,
kind of
more
came
like
back.
28, more
Oh,
like
28.
28 years.
I was
Yeah.
making you
Um,
younger.
you know, and let me back up real quick.
Sure.
I won't expound on it very long, but when I was here back in 1988 for the very first time, okay, um, I lived. You have to keep in mind, I lived on the base as a U.S. Marine. So when I go out and I take my little adventure of the Philippines, I always had the safety and security of the base to retreat to and live that Western style life on the American base. Now, fast forward now 28 years or whatever later, I don't have that luxury of living on the base. So when people say to me, "Oh, I can handle the Philippines. I was there when I was in the military." I stop and caution them and remind them, yes, but you lived a Western lifestyle on the base. You may think that you can handle it, but when you move here and you no longer have a base to retreat to, and you're out living amongst them 24/7 and living on their turf, it's a whole different ballgame. You don't have that base to retreat to, so there's that big difference. My first impression was when I came here 28 years ago or whatever it is. It was like, wow. It was like really surreal. It was like, wow, this country is really poor monetarily, but yet beautiful in so many ways. Not let's face it. When you're a young guy, the women are just absolutely beautiful. Probably, in my opinion, the Panay is probably the most beautiful gal in the world, in my opinion. Okay, um,
We agree.
you know, yeah, and the attraction goes on much deeper than that. It's about how they treat their boyfriends, how they treat their spouses. The loyalty that runs rampant throughout the culture. Um, so those were the things that I could see back in the day, and I clearly see them now, 28 years removed. That hasn't changed. Sure, it's like anything else, like in the United States, you're going to have people that are loyal and you're going to have people that aren't. But for the most part, across the board, the Filipina is an absolutely amazing prospect for a wife. Yeah, that's why so many of us, love the Filipina for many different reasons.
I
Um,
was
so
closing my
yeah,
ears.
a lot's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, then, then let me ask you this: if I come to the Philippines, if I'm an expat from Australia, America, Canada, wherever, and I don't have the safety net of a military base, how do I build that? Where do I find my safe spot in the Philippines? How would you do that?
Well, what I've done, I researched the areas in which I live. I reached out and I consulted other expats. Now, be careful there. Uh, you know the old saying, trust but verify. Do your own research. Um, there were three places that I researched. I researched Manila, Cebu, and Davao City. Okay. So then I eliminated Manila was the very first one I eliminated because of the overpopulation. There were too many foreigners as well in Manila. There's just the traffic flow. Everything was a snarl. I eliminated that. So then it came down to Cebu and Davao City. All right. So then I recognized and I started seeing Cebu as what I refer to as a mini Manila. Very, very similar in terms of, a lot of traffic, a lot of people, a lot more foreigners. I didn't move halfway around the world to have a next door neighbor, a foreigner like me. I want to mingle amongst the nationals, here. Um, so those were the three things. I first and foremost looked where I felt like I would be safe, and this being President Duterte when he was mayor of Davao. Davao used to be the murder capital, if you will, of the Philippines. Like years ago, Detroit used to be the murder capital of the United States. All right. So anyway, President Duterte, when he was mayor, cleaned up Davao. He cleaned it up, became a very safe place to live. But also keep in mind, safety is a relative term. Feeling safe is a relative term. No matter where you go, you still have to use good common sense and be aware of the situation that you're putting yourself in. Be aware of your surroundings. I don't take my safety for granted no more here than I would back in the United States. So do your research about what area to look for. In my case, I had already reached out and I had met somebody online and got hooked up with a really nice foreign couple, professionals that work for Araya Land Incorporated here in the Philippines, a big building industry, builders. And I've been hooked up with them before I got here. So I had a home to live in before I even touched down in Davao. I had that base already covered. So I was able to move right in, and I've been with them ever since I came into the Philippines, and we're like family now, you know. So try to reach out and establish contacts. Do your research, make sure they're legitimate, make sure the area in which you live, is, relatively safe. Again, a relative term. Know the places where you can go in the Philippines and know the places where you perhaps should not go to. You know, it's common sense. It's
It
common
is.
sense, really.
Even living in the United States, if you move to a new city, you better do your due diligence, or where you're gonna wind up in an area of Detroit or Chicago or Rogers, Arkansas, that you go, oh, I shouldn't have moved there. So I think that's absolute great advice, especially about getting a wide array of information and then sifting through it so that you can understand what's real, what's not. It's kind of
Yeah.
like one of the things, where there's smoke, there's fire. The more that you find out that's common, that everybody is saying, is more likely truthful. So, so now that you're there in the Philippines, you've got your landing spot, you've got your home. How have you been able to assimilate and to make the Philippines your home?
Yes. Um, and that'll happen. That'll happen naturally, and it's a progression. It's a work in progress. It takes time. I've like I say, I had established a contact before I came here. Um, the friends of my friends that I made before I arrived in country became my friends by association, and I knew that they were good people because of the circle in which they're a professional couple. So I knew the old saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so to speak. So I
Right.
knew that the company that they kept were good people, hardworking, decent folks. And from there, I was able to spider out, branch out, and develop friendships on my own. You know, and like I say, I want to back up and caution people and let people that I don't want to come across as that I'm all knowing. I'm not. I'm not all knowing. You got those guys out there that are all knowing who will be more than happy to charge you
Take your money.
$50 an hour and take your money for consultation, and they know no more about the Philippines than you or I, but yet they're more than happy to take your $50,
Right.
or
Yeah.
35. Don't pay that. That's one of my biggest pieces of advice. Don't pay anybody to learn and gain information that you can learn on your own through research. All they do is they go on Google, they copy and paste, and they drop it into what they call an ebook, and bam, they're selling it to you, at X amount of dollars per credit. Don't fall into that. I've made ebooks, I've made ebooks, but I only sell mine for $1.99. And in a lot of cases, I don't even care about those. I haven't even managed them for years. What
Right.
I will copy and paste the text and send it to somebody an email if they want it. You know, don't pay anybody for information that you can find via your keyboard.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah, 1,000.
Now that you've been there, you're married and you're happy. What are the cultural things that maybe your wife does that you have started to really embrace? That looking back over time, you've kind of go, I've noticed now I do this, which I didn't used to do. That is what my Filipino wife does.
Yeah. Um, that's another good question. They're hard to kind of explain because they're so little, but yet some of those cultural, I refer to them as annoyances. Let me give you an example. It always works better when you don't just say it and spray it. People see it more clearly when you're able to give an example. Um, for example, one of the cultural things that I had to get used to, in America, when we want to open our window to let some fresh air in, we open the window. Okay, we don't open the screen too. We open the window in America and you leave the screen closed. Why? Well, to keep the
Keep
bugs
moving.
out. I always tell my wife, bugs live outside, humans live inside. So what happens is her family will come here from the province. They'll open the window, which is cool, but they also slide the screen open, wide open. So and then I'll come in, and I'm puzzled, and I'll look and I'll say, "Hun, I can understand why the window is open, but can you explain to me why the screen is open?" And then they would translate and tell child they opened the screen to let the air pass through. And then that makes me ponder even more. Like, isn't a screen like perforated? Doesn't it have like a bunch of little holes, where the air can pass through? You know, so they open the screen to let the air flow through. And so there's stuff like that. Another thing is they'll leave pork out all day long, all day long, and still think it's good to eat at the end of the night. And anybody that knows anything about pork or anything like that knows that you have to refrigerate this stuff. You have to, cover it, let it cool down if it's still hot, and then put it in the ref, right? For preservation. But no, they'll leave the food out on the table all day long, well into the night, and they're still eating on it. And I can't do that. I can't do that because I mean for obvious reasons. The other thing is the bugs here are are just absolutely crazy compared to the United States, and that's because of the tropical climate. And the Philippines has those really tiny microscopic ants that I've never seen before in my life. Okay, they're really small and they move around faster than Barry Sanders. I mean, those things are fast. They're really little. You can hardly see them, but they scurry about and they're real fast. So those things get into everything. If you leave food out on the counter, the ants are coming. Okay, you thought the British were coming, but the ants are coming. So, to make a long story short, I'll say, hey, hon, can you kindly ask your family to cover the food? Sure, no problem. So I'll go out there a little bit later on, and they take a spaghetti strainer, flip it upside down, and they use a spaghetti strainer to cover the food. And I sit there and I'm looking and I'm watching and I'm like, okay, I can understand it is covered, but what's to keep the ants out from penetrating through the strainer into the food? A real head scratcher. So there are some small things that you have to adjust and adapt to, and just get used to. You can't fight everything. So I would say pick and choose your battles. Pick and choose your battles. When it comes to the food being covered, when it comes to the doors not being left wide open, those are my battles. They can do whatever, leaving the lights on all night long. A lot of Filipinos, my family in particular, they like when they come from the province, they like to sleep with the lights on. You know, uh, all night long. I for one cannot fall asleep when the lights are on. So that's fine. That's fine. I don't want everything. I can't win every battle. So you pick and choose what's important to you. And when you do fight a battle, don't don't do it in a rude manner to where you feel like as though don't do it in an American way. You can't behave like an American and deal with Filipinos the same way you would with your friend in the United States. Here's another example. David, you and I, we're friends. We've been friends a long time. You and I, we wake up one day, we're both having a bad day. You and I get into a big argument. 10 o'clock in the morning. You and I, we argue about something silly. We get into a big argument. And then, we say our choice words and we take turns hanging up on each other. I hang up on you, you call me back just so you can hang up on me, the American way, you know? So, but at 10 o'clock a.m., we get into this argument. But at 5 o'clock p.m., one of us is calling the other up and saying, hey, David, or hey, Bill, let's go grab a bite. Let's go out and grab a bite. Yeah, we get the storm passes as fast as it came. Americans get over stuff quick. But in the Philippines, trust me, if you're a foreigner, do not talk to a Filipina or a Filipino, male or female, in the same manner in which you would talk to a fellow American. Because Filipinos are a very proud people and they're not as forgiving, and you will get tampoed. And sometimes, David, they're very forgiving and they will forgive you after a certain amount of time, but some of them will never ever come back. You'll never you'll and it could be something, it could be something very silly. You would deem it as very silly in the United States.
Right.
Um, but here, if you say the wrong thing or talk to a Filipino in the same manner you do your fellow American or your fellow Brit or your fellow German national, whatever country you're from, it's not going to fly here very well, and they're not as forgiving, and you will get tampoed.
And that's a great statement. And I taught international students all my life, and one thing I quickly learned was how to assess their temperature. So
Mhm.
therefore, I can address them in their own temperature, so to speak. And that's for anybody in any country. When you're a visitor, we have to remember we're a visitor, even though
Right.
we're from America. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean, so we do have to be respectful in that. What is your absolute favorite thing, culture wise or tradition wise, that you find in the Philippines? I have mine, so I want to hear what yours is. What is your
Oh,
favorite thing that they do that that you just love?
that's a great question, and I'm hold that thought. OMJ nailed it. OMJ hit it out of the park. We are immigrants here. We are guests here. I am a resident. I am now a resident of the Philippines. But being a resident doesn't give me a right to walk around and act like I'm a citizen, because I'm not. I am
Right.
still a guest here, and that can be revoked at any time. And I might add, it can be revoked from your wife. So you can attain residency through your marriage. And when your marriage, if your marriage dissolves, so will your residency, because you have to maintain that relationship. Okay. So OMJ nailed it. It is up to us to come here and adapt to the way they do things here, because this isn't America. And just because we're Americans, and some foreigners do, I've seen it, they walk around with their chests out and act like they're all about something, because they were a small fish in a big pond back in the US. But when they come over here, they want to be acting like a big fish in a small pond. And when you start being that way, it doesn't go over well, very
That's
well either.
all they really are. So, but anyway,
Yeah. So anyway, what was that question? What was the question?
your your favorite thing in the Philippines that's part of the culture or tradition that you just love that happens in the Philippines?
Oh man, this is so easy. There's a few of them. The family unity, the way the Filipinos embrace their family, the way they bring them in, they're all of equal importance. You don't see a whole lot of this sibling rivalry like you do in the United States, where jealousy manifests, itself. They like to see their family succeed, because in truth, if they have a family member that will succeed, because of the close-knit family structure, culture of the Philippines, they know that they all will benefit, you know. And there's a lot of Filipinos that sacrifice, they go abroad to earn a living for what? Not to line their own pockets, but to help take care of their children as well as their family. So it's the family structure, the family unity that I really embrace, that I come to love about the Philippines, the Filipino people. Now, the other thing you talked about adjusting to is the bird season. When I first came here, I'm like, what? 4 months of Christmas? Are you crazy? How I didn't even have a chance to take my, in my case, take my mask off, But Halloween hasn't even hit yet, and we're already celebrating Christmas. September, October, November, December, the bird season. So I used to think that was ludicrous, because we didn't put up our Christmas stuff until, shortly, just before Thanksgiving, to give, Thanksgiving that
Yeah.
festive look, if you will. But no, they're doing it here. Christmas music, they're hanging lights, trees are up here in September. But I embraced it. I embraced it because it goes back to the whole family thing. If you're going to live in another country, you have to be open minded. You need to be open minded and not be so proud to where you think you can't learn from another people of another country. And I've learned that, hey, you know what? 4 months of Christmas is kind of fun. Now, it doesn't mean yeah, David, it doesn't mean you're sitting around singing Christmas carols for 4 months. It just means that when you go into a store, you hear the Christmas music, you see the trees, you see the decorations. It's festive. And how many times have we said to ourselves or mouthed to other people, wouldn't it be nice if people would treat each other, the same way during the Christmas season all year round, all year round. Don't lose that festive, inner happy feeling that you carry with you. And 4 months of Christmas here in the Philippines, a lot of people, oh no, I can't do that. But you know what? I've adapted to it, and it's actually kind of fun. So the family unity, the Christmas, the birthdays are amazing here. In the United States, they don't celebrate birthdays like they do here in the Philippines. They make a big deal out of it. Make a big deal out of it. The first, the
It's great.
first, yeah, the first year, if I read this right, the first year, the seventh year, the 16th year, Sweet 16, the 18th year, and the 21st year they're all important, but those particular dates are important to a lot of Filipinos for various reasons. You know,
I think their spirit and their happiness is really my favorite thing is how happy and basically polite and respectful people are. Because when I'm there, I find myself being nicer and more respectful. So I kind of embrace, the sir and the ma'am, and you kind of get used to that, and it becomes your norm while you're there. Versus in America, where we all seem to hate each other, it's nice to be around smiling people. That's my favorite thing about the Philippines, that they're happy and they want other people to be happy. So it makes me happy. I
yeah,
like, yeah,
you're right. You are so right. It is contagious. Just
yeah,
like just like cancerous people with cancerous attitudes. You go. How many times you walk into a workplace? You go to work. You're in a good mood, but by the end of the day, because you're surrounded by negative
yeah,
nannies, that your day has become so negative, it affects you as a person. It's just natural. It's going to affect you. So yeah, I agree with that. People here, economically, it still remains a poor country, but yet it's very rich in terms of the people, the
that's right.
way their happiness, the way what's really important to them is God and family. God and family are in that order are very important to the Filipino people. And when you have that in your life, you're gonna be of a free spirit. You're gonna have, I see a lot of people that foreigners. They'll say, "Wow, look at those guys." They will all admit that they're poor, and they probably go to bed at night worrying about what they're going to feed their kids tomorrow. But yet, these are the same people that are smiling. These are the same people who have nothing but willing to give you all they have to make
That's right.
you feel comfortable and to
That's
make
right.
you feel welcome. That
That's right.
is amazing. That is
And
amazing.
thinking of family, hey, would you ever want to bring your wife to the United States either for a visit or to
Yeah.
stay? Would you
Okay,
ever
good
want to
question.
move?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, James Robinson, thank you. Micro ants. Yeah, and I see your comment about the Chinese stores there. Absolutely. Um, would I like to bring my wife to live in the Philippines? Now, if I was younger, I would say yes. Or bring my wife to live in the United States. Sorry, I misspoke. Yes, if I was younger, just to give her that cultural experience of my country, to introduce her, so it will afford her the opportunity to learn a little bit more about me, about what makes me tick as an American, so she can live and experience my culture. But because of my age, I would rather just bring her for a visit, and we have not yet visited the United States. I've been here over 6 years and have not been back to the States yet. So, yeah, I'm longing and missing my family. Um, but I don't want to go back without my wife. And it's harder now to get her approved to go over there, because of various political reasons. Um, but yes, I would like to bring her there and bring her on a visit only. Um, but the reason I don't want to live there at my age is because if something happens to me, then my wife will be all alone,
Right.
you know. And I don't want to remove her. I don't want to displace her from her family, from her friends, and from the culture that she knows, you know. And I don't, this might sound harsh, David. This might sound harsh, um, but I don't, and forgive me if it offends anybody, but I don't want to contaminate her. I don't want to contaminate her in this day and age with the negative American attitudes. They can't even agree on things without firing off and getting mad at one another, over simple stuff. You can't even
Oh, I agree.
voice your opinion anymore. Why would I want to bring my wife into that environment? I personally don't. So I'm very happy with us being here. Check out the Rileys,
Are they in the
H2H,
house?
everybody,
Yeah,
Maureen, Michelle, Karen, hey, hey. Yeah. So,
that's the
somebody else.
reason. Yeah, we're going to be moving to the Philippines. Is exactly what you just said. How do you think your family back here in the U.S. handles you being in the Philippines?
Okay. That is a good question. Another great question. And even at my age, this is one of the things about the American culture. Now I'm not saying that all American families are this way, but what I am saying is my family is this way, with the exception of my mother, my son, and my sister. The rest of them are very judgmental. Okay, even at my age, it's like I have to get their permission to do something that, and not do because they don't agree with it. That's not happening. Billy don't play that way. I've never have. I've been my own man my entire life, and I make my mistakes. They're my mistakes to own, and I don't blame anybody else for my mistakes. But there is a lot of jealousy. There is a lot of sense of abandonment. Some of them feel betrayed. I had one of my own brothers tell me, enjoy your new family. I wasn't like disowning or leaving my family. I was just merely going to live out my life that I deserve to live out because of my trials and errors, the path that I took in my life, the good things that I've done, the bad things that I've done, the mistakes that I've made. They're all mine to own. Nobody owned those with me. So I have a right to live out the rest of my life seeking happiness, to be happy, to feel fulfilled, to live the kind of life that I want. And the kind of life that I want is the life that I was introduced to when I was a 27-year-old Marine and first stepped in country. That is what I fell in love with. I fell in love with that family structure and how they treat one another, wishing that my family or other families in the United States would treat each other with that same kind of love and that same kind of respect. And there might be a lot of people who can relate to what I'm talking about. There might be some people that can't relate. And God bless you. I hope you can't relate because it shows me that you had a healthy, functional childhood. You know,
I
trust
can
me,
relate.
the odds were stacked against me when I was born in Detroit, Michigan. All right. And it's been a tough road to hoe throughout my life. But you don't ever look back on that and say, oh, poor me or poor Billy. We all have our trials and errors. We all have our hurdles in life that help form us to become who we are, to become what we are. And who you are and what you are in the United States is who you are and what you will be when you move to the Philippines. Just because you move to the Philippines, if you're acting like a butthead in the United States, you're going to be a bigger butthead when you move to the Philippines
Absolutely.
because because you're going to be a big fish now, or at least in your mindset, you
Yeah.
think you're going to be a big fish. So, you know, you have to. What I did, even though I'm of age and I can make my own decisions, I did sit down with my family and talk to them out of respect and tried to head off these feelings that I knew that I would be accused of betraying them, trading my family for another family. It had nothing to do with that. It's no different. I looked at it as no different than me, say, living in Wisconsin and deciding one morning I want to move to California. You know,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I'm still going to love my family no matter where I'm at. But there are some people in your own family structure that will not support you. But you have to realize that you lived your life for a lot of times for other people, helping other people, putting other people first, trying to pursue your goals, so other people can benefit from your success as well. Well, you know what? There comes a time in your life where you have to do something for yourself. You have to do something for number one, and that's you. That
That's all.
each of us is number one, and if number one's not happy, ain't nobody else going to be happy. So
That's
I
right.
have no I have no regrets, David, moving here to the Philippines because I'm living out my dream of surrounding myself with a loving, kind, kindred soul of people. Filipinos are of a kindred soul, and I love it. And we Americans, a lot of us can learn a lot from this developing country.
We could. Last two questions, kind of a compound question for you.
Okay.
So now we won't say your age, but you're a
Yeah,
little.
I'm there.
What would you tell that Marine on enlistment day all those years ago as advice? Not about the Philippines, but just general life advice to that kid that joined the Marines. And then, what from your age today would you want your 80-year-old future self to remember or to know?
Well, if I can talk to the kid in me, um, if I can talk to that young kid in me again, I would tell him to to own to own his own mistakes, to take control and own his own life, not to blame the world or to blame everybody around you because you had to grow up in late 1960s Detroit with the city on fire, and you lived amongst brothers, and you later had a stepdad in life, that you were surrounded by hateful people. You didn't have that proper upbringing, that proper male influence. Don't don't I would say, William would say to Billy, don't become what you despise. Don't become what you despise. You got to have something more in life that is bigger than you are, that is bigger than we are, and that's the good Lord Himself. And if you can attach yourself to that foundation and keep God first and foremost in your life, then you're going to be able to handle a lot of the negativity that revolves around you. Because look, we live in a society filled with people who do nothing what that want to bring you down.
That's
So
right.
I would tell Billy, be the best form of the person that you would want to become. So then when you are 80 years old looking back, you can look back and say to yourself, you know what? I made a lot of mistakes in life. I hurt a lot of people in life. I atoned for those mistakes. And I've become the kind of 80-year-old that I told Billy to become when he was in his 20s. You know, try it. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with trying to. A lot of people falsely gauge their success by how much money they make. You know, I know that I have family members that do that. They think they're so successful that because they have money. But let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. What good is that money if you can't use it for good? What
I
good
agree.
is that money if you can't use it to save a life? I have them. I have now. I didn't want to bring this up, but we're really deeply engaged in this real heartfelt conversation, and it's real. And we got to be transparently honest. And I've already let my feelings known. My family, some of my family, could extend my life by helping me with a medical procedure here in the Philippines. But they would rather utilize that money and go out and buy a brand new 55 inch HD for every room of their house,
And
rather
they
than
don't.
helping
Yeah.
that they don't need, rather than helping a loved one, you know, through a difficult time of their life. So money to me doesn't mean anything to me whatsoever. I'm not rich. I'm not poor, but I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination. But I would say be the best person that we can possibly be, so we can reflect that happiness, that kind of love and that kind of joy onto other people. Be the light for other people, because you know what? A lot of people stand in the dark alone, and
That's
some of them are on the ledge, and all it takes is one push to push that person over the ledge. And you don't even know you're doing it, because you don't know where they're at in their mind, in their thoughts. So, but if you can be that light, and you may also never know that you could be the reason why you pulled that person off the ledge and never know it, just by being the light and being kind to other people you know so I would say that the 80-year-old William would hope and pray that he can still become that kind of person. There's times where I fire off at my haters, and by golly, nobody hates it more than I do. When I go to bed at night, I'm like, by golly, I let them get to me. I lost that battle. I lost that battle because I allowed hate to breed hate. I allowed anger to breed anger. And we gotta combat that with kindness and love and be caring. Regardless, People think being loving and caring and forgiving and kind to people, they think that's a weakness.
Yeah.
They view it as a weakness, but it's a strength. And don't ever let anybody tell you different, you know?
Well, let me tell you, I don't believe being wealthy has anything to do with dollars. And so I think you're probably one of the wealthiest people we know because you're kind of heart, you have your priorities squared away, and you care about other people. To me, that's what a rich person is.
Beautiful. Well said. You nailed it. You dunked it. You dunked it. That's exactly what it is. You know, we not everybody is able to give of themselves monetarily to help other people
Yeah,
because not everybody is in that position to help somebody monetarily. But you know, we can help people in another way. You know, we can be supportive of them. We can
that's
be
right.
kind to them. We can build them up, fluff them up. You know, there's an old saying, and I don't know where I heard it, where I read it, but it's been with me most all of my life. And it's this, and it's a concept that I used to use when I worked in a prison as a sergeant and as a lieutenant. I worked in 5 prisons. And even though I worked amongst inmates, I always try to leave people, may it be staff or an inmate, better than what I found them. And if we can carry that out into our everyday life of people around us and leave people feeling better than what we found them, then we are rich.
We are. And we've
You know,
enriched the others.
absolutely, absolutely. Because when you pass the light of the torch to one person, that person is more willing and more apt to pass it on to somebody else. And
That's right.
that's
And
what
the
that
good
to me.
news is
That's what,
that check
you
out
know.
the rallies are going to buy cheeseburgers for everybody. So he's offered to buy cheeseburgers for the entire world. I guess. We'll be lining up and signing up for our cheeseburger, buddy.
We got some great people in here. You look
We
at
do.
your chat. You got Tim Diziak, Maureen Michelle and Ken Vlog, How to Hawaiian,
Lisa D.
Lisa D. Check out the Rileys, J3, OMJ. I mean, all this is what we've been talking about. Have mercy. These are the people that we've been talking about. During this segment, James Robinson. You know,
Mhm.
these are the kind of kind people, the kind folks that we want to circle ourselves with because they feed off of that same energy, because they provide that same kind of light for other people,
They do.
and
They do. And if you
they're good
haven't,
people.
yeah, if they haven't all connected with each other, they need to stay connected, stay supportive, which
Yeah,
means a lot to everybody. I mean, truly
yeah,
be supportive because we're
yeah,
all, a lot of us are in the same boat.
yeah,
We love the Philippines. We care about the Philippine people. We want to see the best for them. And I think, and we want the best for everybody overall. So,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
well,
Ken
that's
Unger. Yeah, Ken
mhm.
Unger, Familia de France, just a couple others amongst many that are the same kindred kind of spirit, um, and you're right, David. Supporting each other no matter what it is. Like look, some people act like their YouTube channel is their life. That YouTube is life. Like, oh my gosh, if something happens to my channel, I don't know how I'm ever going to recover, but it's a hobby for a lot of us, and we keep that in perspective, and it's important that we support and we help each other and encourage one another, and not only just in YouTube but outside. May it be somebody wanting to go to school, encourage that person, fluff people up, make them feel good about what it is they're doing, unless it's not good. Then be loving enough and supportive enough to pull that person aside, not publicly. And, too many people like to throw it out there publicly. Pull that person aside and say, hey, you know what? I can understand where you're coming from, or, that might sound like a good idea on the surface, but I already learned from that mistake. You might want to consider doing it this way. And don't be too proud. Don't be too proud not to at least listen. Listening is free. And if you want to apply it, apply it. If you don't want to, then don't. Just don't come back and blame other people for our mistakes, because we're entitled to make our own mistakes.
That's right. And sometimes I used to tell my students, the younger students, look, sometimes it's good to listen to the old people. I wasn't one of the old people, but I would say sometimes it's good to listen to them. They've been there, they've done that, they understand. So
Yeah.
I've always believed the strongest people allow others to stand on their shoulders to be elevated. So if we elevate people, that's what we have to do in life. So
Absolutely.
does anybody in our chat have any thoughts for either one of us before we get out of here tonight?
Well, yeah, I do one.
What? What's my wife doing? Right.
Maybe we're interested.
I will say this, you guys. One of my biggest disappointments of moving to the Philippines has nothing to do with Filipinos. It has nothing to do with their country or their culture. It has everything to do with some of the expats that I met here. You would think, coming to a different country, a lot of us have a lot of commonalities. We have the commonality that we all left our families behind. Okay, back in our respective countries. You would think that it would be even more important that we all band and unify and be supportive of one another and help each other out and encourage each other, and be there for one another. But I've run into, don't misunderstand me, I've run into a lot of really nice expats here. But for the most part, across the board, I've ran into a lot of angry, bitter, resentful, life-hating expats, and that's been my biggest disappointment to date by living in the Philippines. It's found in other expats. And, like I say, there's a lot of good ones, But for the most part, I've had terrible experience in that category. Just the negativity.
We can take a lesson from, I jokingly tell stories to my friends about my wife. When we travel, the Filipinas, they, no matter where we go, they always find another Filipino. It's like, and they're very happy. And, we travel overseas and I run into another American. It's like,
Yeah. I mean, that's true. That's very true. It's a good analogy because it's real. I mean, I don't know how many times I've tried to make eye contact with another foreigner and they just look the other way. They don't want nothing to do with me.
Right.
So be it.
Johnny, are you there? Did you want to chime in?
J3.
Hi, I'm here.
How are you?
Good to see y'all. It's good to see y'all, for one.
Thank
you for allowing me up here.
No worries.
It's good to hear you.
Hope I'm not overpowering you there, Bill.
What?
I hope it's not overpowering you. I got a new headset.
Oh, no, not at all. You're coming in loud and clear.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds good. So how was your day? Was your day okay?
Oh yeah. I found that restaurant. It's only a 29-minute bus ride for me to get to it, so I'll definitely be there at the time we set up.
What?
So you got a, do we have any good questions for a POD today?
Well,
Just think of it good to ask.
if I've got any questions for POD, I'll just message them straight away.
Oh, I was going to put him on the hot spot.
You can put me on the hot seat.
Come
Billy's
on.
a big.
That's,
I'm a
that's
big
what
boy.
we're
Yeah, I know
doing.
Billy's a big boy. He's got his big boy panties on.
Does anybody
I don't
else
wear
have
I don't wear panties. That's funny. That's another thing. He just brought something up that's funny. In the Philippines, my wife, and when I go to a store and I want to buy, boxers or briefs, they'll say, the clerk will say, "You mean panties, sir?"
I
And I'm
know.
like, "No, no, I don't mean panties. I mean boxers or briefs." I try to explain, men don't wear panties. Women wear panties. Well, some men do. but
It's
but for
like
the most,
asking for a napkin at a restaurant. You don't ask for a napkin at a restaurant.
yeah.
You
Lisa
know,
D, yeah,
napkin.
Lisa McNeese. Hello, hello. Yeah. So yeah, Filipinos, men don't wear panties. We
Hey, we know
wear
what.
briefs, underwear, shorts, what have you. Not panties.
It's not popular there, but we know
Yeah.
brief for the guys and panty for the girls.
Well, the thing that got me was the napkin issue. I was told when I asked for a napkin the first time I was there, the girl looked at me real puzzled and nicely, thankfully, in English said, "A napkin means sanitized napkin. You mean a
Yeah,
paper towel?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want a paper towel."
yeah,
So luckily
yeah.
somebody had on me.
And Dave, that brings up a good point, because you got to really research before moving to any country. It's like I had this conversation. Whoop, J3, we lost him. Simple gestures like thumbs up could be, is fine in the Philippines, but it's very offensive in some Middle Eastern countries. The
Right.
peace sign, depending on which way you hold the peace sign,
That's right.
is can either be okay or offensive.
That's right.
Even
In
the little,
Churchill on that one. Yeah.
yeah, all the little things, all the little things. How to Hawaiian
Yeah.
Demi I mean, you won't know unless you try. Oh my God! You know what? If anybody was to make a comment about that, I would have thought H2H or Tim Dizziak would have been one of the two to make a smart comment like that. You know, that's funny. That's good stuff.
It is. And then I like
But
when you get water in a bag, you know, um,
Ice water.
and yeah, in a Ziploc or little baggie, you get
Ice
water in a
water is in
baggie
the bag.
in the
yeah,
Philippines. That was another one that kind of surprised me. But guys, why don't we wrap it up and let everybody go do whatever they're going to? It's kind of the closing time at the bar. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
yeah,
It's 2 a.m. and the bars are shutting down.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I want to thank everybody in the in your chat box for coming in, hanging out with us.
Yeah,
Again, I'm not all knowing. Don't ever want to come across that way. I'm just a guy that lives in the Philippines with some experiences and opinions. That no more, no less. That's all it is. Oh, one last thing, real quick. If you do move to the Philippines, do yourself a favor and make sure you have health insurance. Don't listen to expats who say you don't need health insurance to live in the Philippines because you can pay everything. Everything is so cheap. Yeah, if you want to get a tooth pulled or have some stitches put in, yeah, it's cheap. But when you start talking about some real internal issues, it's not cheap. Please, if you move to the Philippines or any other country, make sure that you have health insurance.
How much is it?
You're talking about like in addition to, because if you're married, if I understand, you can be a part of the Phil Health program. So are you
Yeah, that
talking in addition
yeah,
to?
yeah, that Phil Health program. To explain just really quick on that. That only covers X amount. Um, if you're an admission, you have to be admitted. Okay, it does not cover you as an outpatient. You have to be admitted. The other thing with Phil Health, and since you brought them up, I don't know what their status is right now.
Yeah, they're
There's
in
been
trouble.
some kind of, yeah, there's some legal issues going on with them right now. And this goes back to me saying at the onset of your stream that there's governmental agencies that take advantage of the people and keep people oppressed, keep people, people can't get ahead here because there's always somebody trying to take your money. Okay. So with Phil Health, like for example, my situation, it would cost 2,000 USD for me to get stents put in. Okay. Phil Health, um, Phil Health would, only cover like 18K, of that, 18K, PHP,
Okay.
of that. But there's still that gross amount of bill that you're still left over with. And on top of it, that doesn't count the talent fee. They call it talent fee for the doctor. You have to pay the doctor additional monies. That's just for the procedure, for the hospital, for the food, whatnot. So that bill can be rung up and you're not going anywhere until your bill is paid in full.
That's
And
right.
you're being charged every additional day that you spend in the hospital.
Yeah.
So health insurance, my friends, get
My,
it.
or cheaper to fly back home, get it done, and fly back.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Bruce Davis, Sean Williams, hello, hello.
Bruce
So
and Sean.
anyway, that's about
POD
it.
and I have been out here for quite a while. So you guys stopping in a little bit there. We're glad you guys came by. We appreciate you very much. But I'm going to go watch the election news and go to bed because
She's so young.
that's right. Us old people have to get our beauty rest.
Teenager need a beauty.
Bruce Davis.
Mars,
I hear you, brother. I need my beauty sleep.
no pink thong here. No pink thong here. Oh my goodness. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to vision anybody in a pink thong, to be honest.
Yeah,
They're talking about
yeah.
panty.
Yeah. So
That'd
okay,
be
everybody.
scary.
That's right. Remember, the bars are closed and it's 2 a.m. You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. So we'll see everybody soon.
Hey, Philippine American couple, I want to thank you both for bringing me up. I really appreciated it. You asked some really good questions and very nice. Thank you very much.
We enjoyed it. We love having fun, and you're a great guest, and we'll do more of these. You'll see more of these down the road. So, but thank you for taking your time out to hang out with the boss and me.
No problem. It was fun. And just a real quick shout out to Darren Travels and FDG who just popped in. You guys
Yeah.
take care, everybody in the chat, and I'll catch up with you. And again, thank you very much, David, you and your wife. Thank you. Glad to see both of your surgeries are
Oh, wow.
okay. Yeah, both of you. Yeah. Take good care.
No, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. You're welcome. Walay sapayan. Bye-bye.
Bye.